Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Classics with Courtney, and thank you for joining me this month for Jean Tierney Month. Today, we are going to rock off with her nominated performance in Leave Her to Heaven, released in 1945 and co-starring Cornel Wilde, Jean Crane, and Vincent Price. We are introduced to our leading man, Richard Harland, played by Cornel Wilde, and given his backstory from Glenn Roby's perspective, played by Ray Collins.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was staring at you, wasn't I? I didn't mean to, really. It's only because you look so much like my father. When he was younger, of course, your age. A most remarkable resemblance. For a moment, I thought... Do forgive me.
Well, to tell you the truth, I was doing quite a bit of staring myself. And I assure you, it's not because you look like my mother. As a matter of fact, I can't say you look like anyone I've ever met before.
Then why did you stare?
Do you really want to know?
If it's not too unflattering.
Now, you know perfectly well that nothing I could say about you, the way you look at me, could be anything but flattering. Of course, if you don't like flattery.
Oh, but I do.
Hello, Glenn. How are you? Nice to see you.
Glad to see you, Dave.
Oh, you look fine.
How's your brother?
Oh, Danny's still flat on his back. He wanted very much to come, but the doctor thought the trip might be too much for him.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ladies, may I present Mr. Harlan? Mrs. Barrett?
How do you do?
How do you do, Mr. Barron?
Ruth Barrett?
How do you do?
Hello.
Ellen Barrett.
How do you do?
How do you do?
You met on the train, rather briefly.
Too briefly.
Well, I've got the car right here, folks. You all ready?
The fact of the matter is, Mother just doesn't like New Mexico.
Since this is my first visit to New Mexico, I don't see how you can say such a thing.
It's true just the same. Father and I used to come here every spring, year after year. And occasionally Ruth came along, but never Mother.
So it seems as if the film is actually starting to show us that there's something a bit off about Ellen's character. When she gets off the train, she is alone. Her mother and her cousin, aka her so-called sister, are already off the train, but they are together. She's secluded, which kind of makes you think that she would rather be alone. And then the fact that she basically goes off at dinner saying how she and her father loved Mexico, but her mother couldn't stand it. There's something a bit off with Ellen, but we don't know what. It's just those little subtle hints that I think the film really gives off, that something is not at all what it seems. After waiting all afternoon for Ellen's return, Richard then decides to go after her and make sure she is okay.
You all right?
Oh, yes, perfectly. I just wanted to be alone for a while. Thank you for coming to the funeral this morning.
You knew I was there?
Yes, I saw you as I rode by.
I hope you don't think it was just curiosity.
No, I understand. I'm glad you were there.
So am I. I'll never forget it.
Father used to say it was like riding across the front lawn of heaven. We made a pact to bring our ashes here when we died. If you die first, I told him, I'll bring yours here. If I die first, you'll bring mine.
Well, what sort of man am I?
You're a bachelor. 30 years old. You were born and raised in Boston, and you went to Harvard, where you edited the Lampoon. When you graduated, you went to Paris, and you studied painting for a while. You have a lodge in Maine called Back of the Moon. Before you went in for writing novels, you were a newspaper man. Your favorite sport is fishing, and you speak French and Spanish quite well. Why did you come for me tonight?
I don't know exactly. Everybody assured me you'd be perfectly all right. I guess it was just an impulse.
Like the time you took the freighter?
Yes. You knew I was coming up there tonight. You were waiting for me, weren't you?
Yes. And you came, didn't you?
After some more time with the family, Richard finally meets Ellen's fiancé, Russell Quinton, played by Vincent Price. Ironically, Vincent and Jean would go on to make 2 other films other than Leave Her to Heaven. They played in Laura in the previous year, 1944, this, and then Dragonwyck in 1946.
Surely there's no political significance in the fact that a lady has changed her mind.
I don't understand it, Ellen. I always knew you'd never marry me while your father was alive. But after he died, I thought there might be a chance. What happened?
I'm in love.
You're in love. Lady, you literally just met this guy. And I don't really think you're in love with him. I think you're in love with the fact that he resembles your father.
Don't look so downcast. I'll still be able to vote for you.
Perhaps you don't think I'm good enough for you, or romantic enough. I know people thought I was marrying into the Barrett family for reasons, but that's not true. I want you to know that I had only one reason. I want you to know that I was in love with you. I'm not a man who loves often, Ellen. I love once.
Thank you, Russ. That's quite a concession.
Now, look here, Ellen.
Darling, will you marry me?
Why, you unpredictable little...
And I'll never let you go. Never, never, never.
After the marriage of Ellen and Richard, they go spend their honeymoon at Warm Springs, where Richard's brother Danny is staying.
I hope you like her, Danny. Because if you don't, we'll send her right back.
Oh, please don't let him fire me, Danny. I like this job.
Don't you worry. If he fires you, I'll hire you.
Ellen didn't like Taos.
I thought Warm Springs would be a much better place for a honeymoon.
Gosh, I hope you can stay a while.
We're going to take a cottage right here in Warm Springs.
And live here, you mean?
That's right.
That's Ellen's idea. That's the way she wants it.
Gosh.
It's sheer understatement to call this ambrosia soup.
I call it consomme à la patchouli.
But when you get around to hiring a cook, be sure and teach her the recipe.
I have no intention of hiring a cook, or a housekeeper, or any other servants.
You mean for the present?
I mean, ever.
Idiot.
I don't want anybody else but me to do anything for you. I want to keep your house and wash your clothes and cook your food.
A born slavey.
And besides, I don't want anybody else in the house but us.
Ever?
Ever.
Well, but suppose in the natural course of events.
No, that's different.
And what about Danny?
Well, that's different too.
Has Dick been busy lately?
Yes, he's been working awfully hard on his book. And we mustn't interrupt him. And besides, have you forgotten our secret?
Danny!
Dick! Dick!
Danny! Danny!
Now we can, all 3 of us, go to Back of the Moon. Can't we, Dick? Can't we?
You bet we can. You bet we can.
I gave up my honeymoon to come here so that my husband could be with his brother. But he's been working and the burden's been on me. I've spent hours here every day. I was glad to do it. It was no sacrifice at all. I love Danny as much as he does. And I'm just as happy as he is that Danny's doing so well. But after all, he's a cripple.
So I have a couple thoughts here. First off, the costumes in this film are exquisite. I especially love the pink blouse and the blue plaid skirt that Jean wears. I want this outfit so badly. No, I don't know how to sew, but I do have a sewing machine for future uses. But I so desperately want this outfit. 2, I believe this is where we really get to see Ellen's character really start to dwindle down. The fact that she boasts about giving up her honeymoon to spend it with her husband's brother, but then blurts out to the doctor he's a cripple. There's something very unstable about her. And I think this is really where we get to see that something is not quite right. Granted, the fact that she also gives up her fiance that she's known for years for a man she just met also doesn't help her case. But I don't know. Jean plays her very well, but it's that subtle hint that something is not right. I also want to point out the fact that as she's boasting about giving up her honeymoon to spend with Danny, we see her kind of seclude him away from his brother, saying that he's working on his book and that she's working with something with Danny, which is to help him walk. I believe the idea was she wanted him to walk so that she can ship him off to school. She wanted Richard all to herself, and that included his baby brother. And once again, I think this is a really, really bad case of instability. Once Danny is able to leave the hospital and goes to Back of the Moon, their lodge on the lake in Maine with Richard and Ellen, things don't exactly go the way Ellen wants them to.
You like it here, do you?
Every minute. If only it weren't so crowded.
Crowded? Why, this is the most remote, uninhabited place east of the Mojave.
I mean the cabin. Not that I mind chaperones, not in the least. But there's Danny's room on one side of us, and Thorne's room on the other side, and the walls as thin as paper, and the acoustics disgustingly perfect.
Well, at least nobody snores.
Do you know, ever since we've been married, we've never been alone, not for a single day.
We wanted to surprise you, honey.
What shall the harvest be? Oh, a possum and a tomcat had a fight. They fought all day and they fought all night. They fit and they fought till their tails dug the ground. Then they hoisted up their tails and they fit another round. Oh, deedle-deedle-dum-dum, deedle-deedle-die, deedle-deedle-dum-dum, deedle-i-die, deedle-deedle-dum-dum, deedle-deedle-die, die-da-die-die-die.
Suppose we could find some wild wisteria and transplant it around the cabin?
I know where there's some.
Oh, fine. Then tomorrow we... I'm afraid Thorne won't have time for that. He has his work to do.
Look what I can do. Thorne showed me.
What happened tonight? Ever since Ruth and your mother arrived, you've been acting like a shrew. At the landing, you were cold. At dinner, aloof and sullen. And after dinner, you were beastly.
I wasn't expecting guests.
They're your own people. I thought you'd be pleased.
Don't let's quarrel, Richard.
And Danny adores you. You hurt him. Why?
I was upset.
You were insulting to your mother, mean to Thorne, treated him like a servant.
Well, isn't he?
Certainly not. He's a friend, one of my dearest friends.
Is Ruth one of your dearest friends, too?
What's eating you? Ruth is your own sister.
Ruth is not my sister. All night long, you devoted yourself exclusively to her.
Well, somebody had to make her welcome.
Maybe you're in love with her.
You're in a rotten mood, Ellen. What's happened to you? You're deliberately whipping yourself into a fit of hysterics.
Oh, no, I mustn't do that. It might disturb Mother and Ruth or wake up Danny.
Oh, darling, forgive me.
I'm sorry.
I can't help it. It's only because I love you so. I love you so I can't bear to share you with anybody.
What's wrong with Ellen?
There's nothing wrong with Ellen. It's just that she loves too much. Perhaps that isn't good. It makes outsiders of everyone else, but she can't help it. You must be patient with her. She loved her father too much.
Unfortunately, after Ruth and her mother depart, it doesn't get any better. Richard still has burning questions about Ellen and little subtle hints that are given by Ruth and her own mother. And Ellen goes and does one of her most despicable acts.
How'd you like to go to Bar Harbor for a while? I had a letter from Ruth, and she'd love to have you.
I'd love to go. With Dick, you mean?
Well, no, he doesn't want to leave here until the new book's finished. And then we can join you.
No, I'd rather wait then. Till we can all go together, the three of us.
We wouldn't be separated for long. Just a few weeks.
No, I'd rather wait. Can I swim all the way across today?
Think you could make it?
Why, sure. I made it 3/4 yesterday, and I wasn't a bit tired.
You're not making very much progress, Danny.
Oh, water's cold. Colder than I thought. I ate too much lunch. I got a stomachache. Alan, there's a crowd. Alan! Alan! Help me!
When I first saw this movie many, many years ago, back when I actually was starting to watch more older films, I hated Ellen's character with every fiber of my being. I wanted her to get her comeuppance so badly, and I couldn't stand her. The older I get and the more I see this movie, the more appreciative I am of Gene Tierney's incredible acting of bringing this character to life. As a character, Ellen is one of the worst femme fatale. I don't mean worse by like bad acted or whatever. She's incredibly talented. The problem is with her instability and jealousy, it leads her to do heinous crimes. In this case, it leads her to murder, which she does on another occasion, which we will see later on. The fact that she's able to let Danny drown is another calculating, heartless thing that this character could do. It is angering to me that she would allow this poor boy to die in that way, and that it's just all because she's jealous. In my mind, you could have easily fixed this by just simply asking Richard, listen, I know how close you are to your brother, but how about we have some alone time, maybe in a month or so. We can go and have a proper honeymoon while Danny goes to school kind of thing. And then Richard, if he agreed with that, could talk to Danny about that and say, listen, I need to have a honeymoon with my sister, so here's what we're going to do. When you are able to go to school, her and I are going to go and have a proper honeymoon, and then we'll be back. Instead, she takes it into her own hands to just get rid of him altogether. And that makes this character incredibly heartless. After Danny's death, Richard becomes more of a shell of himself, withdrawing from everyone, and of course, this doesn't sit well with Ellen.
He's dropped his work. He's dropped everything. I'm losing him, Ruth. I'll die if I lose him. You've always helped me, Ruth. Help me now. A little time, Ellen. You'll see. He's had a great loss. There's a great emptiness in his life. If he only had a child of his own.
So in order to get Richard back, you are going to get pregnant? Boy, I can't wait to see how this turns out.
You've got to stop gadding about.
Gadding? What are you talking about? This baby's making a prisoner out of me.
Now, what are you having it for, then?
I can't do anything. I can't go anyplace. I don't even see my husband.
Why don't you have him come in here?
Because I don't want him to see me this way.
That doesn't make sense.
What are you talking about? You're the best non-pregnant pregnant woman I've ever seen.
Look at me. I hate the little beast. I wish it would die. Ellen. shocked, aren't you? If you were having the baby, you'd love it. Well, I never wanted it. Richard and I never needed anything else. And now this.
How can you say such wicked things?
Sometimes the truth is wicked.
Okay, so before you commit a murder, you have to dress pretty, put some perfume on, and put a little bit of lipstick on. Okay, 1940s logic, I guess.
Ellen. Call the doctor.
Couldn't save the child. It was a boy.
I hadn't really hoped it. As long as she's out of danger.
Oh, yes. You may rest assured of that. When she came to, she remembered nothing about leaving her room. She thought she must have been walking in her sleep.
Well, she couldn't have been asleep. I was with her only 20 minutes before it happened.
After the death of their unborn son, Ellen finally gets her talking to.
What are you running away from? Is it me?
Ellen, when we were kids, you used to torment me every way you could think of. You can't do that anymore.
Is it Richard?
If you must know, I'm going away because I can't stand living in this house any longer. The whole place is filled with hate. Your hate.
Not hate, love, Ruth. Richard's love for me. All these weeks I was in the hospital, helpless. You had him here in the house to yourself. But it didn't do you any good, did it? He still loves me more than ever. That's what you can't abide. That's why you envy me, isn't it?
I don't envy you, Ellen. All my life I've tried to love you, done everything to please you. All of us have. Mother, father, and now Richard. And what have you done? With your love, you wrecked Mother's life. With your love, you pressed Father to death. With your love, you've made a shadow of Richard. No, Ellen, I don't envy you. I'm sorry for you. You're the most pitiful creature I've ever known.
We haven't done that for a long time, shared things. Ever since Danny... You've never forgiven me for that, have you?
You did tell me not to let him swim the lake unless you were with us, but we wanted to surprise you. Danny was so happy planning to surprise you. He'd been doing so well. He swam 3/4 the day before, and he was sure he could make it. The water was so warm. I thought there was no danger. I must have looked away for a moment, and then when I looked back, Danny was sinking. I pulled at the oars and then lost one, and then I grew panicky. It was like a nightmare.
Like walking in your sleep?
Yes. Yes, I began to paddle, and the boat didn't seem to move.
And so you let him drown. Didn't you? What happened that day at Back of the Moon? You got rid of everybody else. Your mother, Ruth, Thorne. There was only Danny left. What were you thinking of? You never really cared for him. You only pretended to. What happened? Did he refuse to leave?
Don't, Richard. Don't.
Was that why you killed him?
I didn't mean to let him drown.
But you did, didn't you? You're a perfect swimmer. And the boat was so far away, and he was going down for the 3rd time. You killed him. You let Danny drown, didn't you? Didn't you?
Yes. Yes, I did. I let him drown, and I'd do it again. I didn't want him around. I didn't want anyone but you.
You loved me, you said. Wanted only to make me happy.
Yes. Yes, that was all I ever wanted, Richard. Your happiness, only that. I didn't mean to let Danny drown. I didn't plan it. I swear I didn't. But when the cramp caught him and he went under, I thought if he never came up again, I'd have you all to myself. I thought if he was gone, you'd have only me. And suddenly, while I was thinking that, he was gone. I was sorry then and frightened, and I tried to find him, honestly, tried hard, but it was too late. Why don't you kill me, Richard? You could so easily, you know.
And the baby. You never wanted it, did you?
No. Oh, don't you see, Richard? I didn't want anyone around, only you. I wanted to be just with you. I couldn't stand having anyone between us. Oh, I love you so, Richard. I love you so.
I'm leaving you, Ellen.
After Richard's decision, Ellen decides to do one last evil, desperate act.
Richard. I'm going to die.
Oh, don't talk like that, Ellen. You're going to be all right.
No. You mustn't feel sorry for me. I'm not afraid. Only promise me one thing. I want to be cremated, like my father. And my ashes scattered in the same place. Remember?
I remember.
Promise?
Of course, Ellen. I'll promise anything you like, only...
Richard! I'll never let you go, Richard. Never. Never.
Murder. I've been asked how I happened to investigate the death of Mrs. Harland. This letter is my answer. I ask you to read it.
Dear Russ, I'm writing this letter to you because we once meant a great deal to each other, and there's no one else to whom I can go for help. Richard is leaving me.
Proceed, please, Mr. Harland.
It was after I left the hospital I first began to sense a change in my husband. At first I thought it might be due to the loss of our child. And then the truth, the awful truth, began to dawn on me. The reason for the change was Ruth. Russ, they love each other and want to get rid of me. When Richard suggested a divorce, I went to Ruth and begged her to give him up. She said she intended to have him and would stop at nothing. I told Ruth I would never give Richard a divorce, and it was then that she threatened to kill me.
Did you love him after his brother Danny was drowned? Did you love him after the death of his stillborn child, after his wife died? Did you love him last week, a month before, a year before? Are you in love with him today?
Yes. Yes, I am in love with him. I think I've always loved him.
Are you in love with her? Are you in love with the woman who murdered your wife?
My wife was not murdered. She killed herself.
Do you honestly believe Ellen committed suicide?
Yes.
Knowing her as you did and I did, you think her capable not only of committing suicide, but falsely accusing her own sister of her death?
Ellen was capable of anything.
You actually want the jury to believe that she was that sort of monster?
Yes, she was that sort of monster. A woman who sought to possess everything she loved, who loved only for what it could bring her, whose love estranged her own father and mother, whose love possessed her father until he couldn't call his soul his own, who by her own confession to me killed my brother, killed her own unborn child, and who is now reaching from the grave to destroy her innocent sister. Yes, she was that sort of monster.
It took the jury only 10 minutes to bring in a verdict of not guilty for Ruth. But Harland had sacrificed himself. In withholding knowledge of Ellen's crime, he'd become an accessory. He got 2 years. But Ellen had lost. I guess it's the only time she didn't come out first.
After the pain that Ellen caused during her death, we actually see a happy ending for Richard and Ruth, and in a way, a slap to the face of Ellen. And that concludes my review of Leave Her to Heaven. What did I think of it? It's a great film noir. It's one of the best film noirs of the 1940s. Everything about this movie is amazing. The Technicolor is absolutely stunning. The costumes by Kay Nelson are exquisite. The acting and the cast is both top-notch. And then, of course, we have the score by the great Alfred Newman, which, if I'm going to be honest, it's not the best score, but we have that incredible theme that I like to call Ellen's theme that plays very sinisterly and yet elegantly. Very, very nice. The film is actually based on the same book of the same title by Ben Ames Williams. I have read the book twice, and I remember the book being very, very good. I haven't read it in quite a while, but I definitely recommend you giving it a chance. It's definitely different enough from the film, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe they kind of make Ellen in the film just a tad more likable than her counterpart in the book. I also want to point out that the Lux Radio Theater radio drama, also starring Jean and Cornell reprising their roles, is also very good. Although I believe they kind of soften Ellen's character for the radio program than what they did in the film.
Since Ruth and your mother arrived, you've been acting, well, pretty badly, Ellen.
I wasn't expecting guests, George.
I thought you'd be pleased.
Don't let's quarrel.
And then at dinner tonight, Luke. You treated him like a servant.
Well, isn't he?
Certainly not. He's one of my best friends.
Is Ruth one of your best friends, too?
Ruth is your own sister.
She is not my sister. All night long, you devoted yourself exclusively to her.
Well, someone had to make her feel at home.
Maybe you're in love with her.
Oh, you're in an awful mood, Ellen.
Maybe that's why you invited her up here.
Please, do you want her to hear you?
I keep forgetting you can't draw a deep breath in this room without being heard all over the place. I mustn't disturb Mother and Ruth, must I? Or wake up Danny.
Ellen, what's got into you?
I don't know. I don't know. Oh, darling, forgive me. I'm sorry. I can't help it. It's only because I love you so. I love you so I can't bear to share you with anybody.
Ellen. Oh, it's all right, darling. It's all right.
But it's still a lot of fun to listen to. I highly recommend both the book, the movie, and the Lux Radio Theater drama. All in all, the film is well made and just made with such love and passion, and it's a thought-provoking film, and I highly recommend it. And that wraps up my review of Leave Her to Heaven. What did you guys think of this movie? Do you think Jean should have won an Oscar for this movie? Or was it definitely worthy of the nomination? I, for one, definitely think it was worthy of the nomination. We all know that Joan Crawford would win that year for Mildred Pierce, another great film noir, but definitely worth the Oscar. But in the meantime, Jean did a really great job with this one, and I can't wait to discuss the next film with you guys. So stay tuned for that one, and let me know in the comments below if you have seen Leave Her to Heaven, and let me know your thoughts. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye! Have a great and wonderful day.